Good evening, everybody. System Chalk here with the 122nd episode of our first YouTube run through House of Light, the expansion to Book of Hours. So we finished off a big batch of work. I think we should already be resting on a memory. We are. So all that remains for today is to get through the evening. I'll maybe try and take a second here. It'd be nice if I could shelve the different ingredients, and I suppose I did just get some storage down here, so let's maybe see if I can get lucky. I will confess that I've never been too good with any materials in the game. Alright, looks like I'm coming up short. Fair enough, we'll just run that ahead. So there are a few sections that'll take material, something with the potential to become something, if I put it in something. The drawback is that very often the places that can use the material, I don't really have the need for the specific item. So for instance, for Westcott's compounds, there are very few cases where I need 2 forge that I'm not sort of getting that 2 forge from something else. But with that in mind, it was a chance for me to be able to make something. Now, I think it's fair to say that for my activities in winter, I can't see a situation where I need to... I can't really see a situation where I need to wait for the weather for a certain outcome. Sorry, I gotta sneeze. So there's a reasonable question as to whether or not I want to bring in Mr. Kill again for another room. I don't think it would hurt. Let me take a second here. I did simplify the notepad. I can't remember if I kept Mr. Kill though. Sorry. All right. So, just to sketch it out with Mr. K, and we might as well do it for, for 15, because it's 14 for the higher level. So we'll start with 2 winter. Whist will get us up to 4. Tool will give us 1, bring us up to 5. So memory... I'll just go for this 6 for simplicity, which brings us up to 11. Okay, what's tool memory? So, and then a drink for 4 brings us up to 15. Pretty easy math. So, let's... Oh, gotta talk to him first. Let's do it. And of course, to cover the cost, in this case we'll use metal. Fixing and mending. There's not much work on offer in Brandkrug, but I can find 6 pence worth of odd jobs. So we've already got what we need as far as the lessons are concerned. So really at this point we're deciding where we'd like to place the others. Now I am tempted to sort of read the Tridesma Hyra ones just because I can, really. So I'm going to do just a quick run. I know I did this earlier, but for Tridesma Hyra, so that's at a 2, and that for Bosk and Preservation means that at a minimum it can go up to 4. For Orchids and Narcotics... Oh, forgot to move Applebright. Orchids and Narcotics, so that's a Bosk or Skolakosophy. Skolakosophy, I think, has a minimum of 6, but Bosk has a minimum of 4. So that's sort of hanging roughly where it should be right now. I think that one's I'm going to need to have a bit of a think about. Queens of the Rivers. So I think we had a version of this that I did before, and I think the determination was that Path and Pilgrim would be at a minimum 4, which meant that I was going to... yeah, unless I know I'm locking that into Nyctodromy, but I think Nyctodromy, I think I know I'm going to put in those 2 slots. I was thinking Auroral Contemplations and Pearl and Tide. That was partly reflecting on what I had available in Illuminations, because there's quite a few that I've already got in mind for Illumination, even though I haven't put them in. Whereas Pearl and Tide, well, that one's a little bit harder to justify because it was between Bosk and Nyctodromy, but I seem to remember, I think this was from a previous playthrough. Or I could be wrong. That is on my notes here, where I put those. There's a couple where I'm like, remember to, and then I sort of put it on the top, and then I don't put any other notes. So I'll be open to changing those if it comes down to it. But okay, Leaves and Thorns. So that's currently at a 4. That goes into Bosk and Birdsong. So Bosk again is a 4 here. Birdsong is is also a 4. I am slightly more inclined to follow through on this one, though. I should actually be willing to follow through on both of these, because I notice between Bosk and Birdsong, there are definitely a few that haven't gotten up to the level that they need to be. So I'm thinking Furs and Feathers, for instance. That'd be a really good example of something that I think it was going to be in Bosk that was going to go up to a 4. Anyways, we won't worry about that right now. Preliminal Meter, definitely reading just verse is on the list. So actually what I'll do here, let's maybe move Queens of the Rivers up. Wonderful shape. Actually, you know what? Among these, this is already plenty for me to handle. So let's actually think about working with a few of these books now. So Tripled Heart. This is a Hennebeck. And we need 2 more. So in fact, I think Trides Mahaira will just do the trick here. So I can master this mystery. Okay, Journey to the Grove is a 10 Grail. It'd be nice if I could put something a little lower, but I think... Well, actually, one answer here would be the core. I'm trying not to use up too many of the more scarce elements. Now, I think I just made life difficult for me with the berry book, though. So my next best would be Stone Store. Okay, we've got some possibilities here. So if I add the health, the berry book, Kilisimi. So from there, I can add Stone Stories. My other option here would be Drums and Dances, but I would need to find a desk which will take Heart instead. So I need just one more. I'm trying to remember if there's a Nectar... the Mortar and Pestle, I believe, will do the trick. There we go. And what else? Just verse. So I probably shouldn't have the expectation that I'll get all of these handled in one go. It'd be cool if I could, but it's not a requirement. Looks like we have a bit of a rose gap here. Okay. You can do it. I believe in you. I tried. Man, it really does not want to switch those around. Almost there. I suppose I could try to read a few more of these, but I think this is plenty for me to handle over the course of the day. So I am going to need to get the knife. Oh, yeah, sorry. No, we're already using the knife with Mr. Kill. So I think we'll let the day play out, and then we'll see... Hey, a storm, too. So, under some circumstances, this would be where I try to bring in Mrs. Kill with something like the Gaping Darkness. And the big argument for that, of course, would be I can combine that with the Swaddled Thunder. But I think in this point here, I have enough to get by. Like, the Swaddled Thunder will be helpful to use in certain circumstances, and yes, being able to use a storm to open up certain rooms. Like, let's say if it was the sagging dock, or something like the mazed cell, that might be a little bit more interesting. Getting down into the Gaping Darkness is cool, but it's maybe not essential. So I'm just gonna hold off on taking advantage of that. Although maybe we'll turn that into a Swaddled Thunder or something by the end of the day. I'm not quite sure what I want to do with that yet. All right. Let's do it. So as before, we'll load him up with his boosts before we go too far down into the day. It might have been an idea for me to read some books ahead of time, but I'm actually running into the potential that there could already be conflicts in terms of the memories that come out. And again, I don't have a whole lot of expectations for today, so as long as I'm sort of recovering a little bit of the money, and as long as I can get most of the things I want to get done over the course of the day, I don't mind splitting up the lessons. My assistant and I will be prudent. All right, so let's use the Wormwood Dream. The main idea behind that is just so I can generate a replacement without too much trouble. And then I think it's just a question of some Solomon's preparation and the knife, and then we're ready to start using him for memories. As I used to say in my youth, the day is done and so am I, but I've earned my pay. It is winter and the storms have tightened the seas. I am sitting before the fire in the sweet bones with a beef and potato pasty in one hand and a hot ale posset in the other. I may want to think about the salon at some point, but again, we've seen that there isn't a whole lot for me to do as far as prep is concerned. Even if we host, like, at the beginning of the season, that's usually when I figured everything out. We've had more than enough time both to deal with the lessons that come from the salon as well as the make some more progress on my reading list. So I don't know, it'd be fun. Like, I do like doing the prep, but I think right now I'm just going to enjoy going through the different rooms. Although I am debating about my choice not to do anything about the storm. So let's grant the drink. I can offer my assistant something to drink. This will increase their aspects. They'll also be glad of the refreshment. And as just a pure curiosity, so So Mrs. Kill has 1 heart. Core, 2, which is good for 3. Storm, which is good for 4. Brings her up to 7. So 6 brings it up to 13. So yeah, I mean, if I wanted... Which was it? The Gaping Darkness. I have worse options. Let's think about what the other alternatives would be here. So if we gave her a tool instead, so that would bring us up to 8. Yeah, I think it's... I think what it comes down to is the food and drink. So unless I can somehow make a Ruby-wise ruin... But then again, I mean, what am I really gaining by hanging on to so many Swaddled Thunder, right? So maybe I loosen up and I... Actually, you know what the funny thing is? Just bring Denzel. I'm always welcome at Denzel's smithy. Denzel rarely works for free, but he won't take payment for helping a friend. Okay, the Tripled Heart, sacred poems composed in honor of the hours venerated by the Sisterhood of the Triple Knot. The Grail is celebrated for her colors, the Malachite for her sweetness, the Axe for her constancy. The Thunderskin, least of the hours of the Knot, when he is even counted among their number at all, is celebrated with an unexpected poignant elegy. What lives departs, what is dead remains. Alright, so that got us an intuition. Mind you, that's all that I need to level that up. So I'll put that on the intuition shelf, which is getting crowded, I noticed. So I don't know if this will work. No. But I bet you this one will. Just barely, though. Oh, no. I'm 1 short. Shoot. That really complicates things. Okay, so what if I tried one of these? So I'm wondering if I can get all the salt books on this side. Looks like I... Whoops! Looks like I can. think I'm probably just setting myself up for another batch of shuffling for a future session, but and then this becomes the gossip shelf again. All right, this will do for now. The Berry Book. Thirza Blake, 7th librarian of Hush House, talks about fruit for no other apparent reason but that it was the kind of thing she did. She talks about fruit in the woven language Kilisimi. Who was it once said, "Fruit is the womb of a plant"? It was me. Take a few moments to think on that in ripened wisdom. I shall leave a blank space for your moments here in this page. Nectar, children mine, cast my words into a sufficiency of nectar and watch the Pyrus persimmon burst from wood. Gather more nectar, wring it from the trees and the earth, and our persimmon gushes forth the sacrament. You will thank me. So I think we lost the memory for this one. Yeah, so we've got leaves and thorns, but I'm not 100% sure on what the contents of that one will be. Just Verse, a rare surviving copy of Christopher Olopolli's notoriously unsuccessful volume of experimental poetry published in 1912. Olopolli is clearly more interested in the occult than aesthetic aspects of the work. By most measures, the rhymes are contrived, the meter inconsistent, the imagery banal. Still, even the worst verses have a compelling quality, and I find myself drumming my fingers on the desk to accompany their rhythms. In an afterword, Olopolli discusses mnemonic holometaboli, by which he seems to mean a sort of crafting process where memories, when fed into a preliminal meter technique in the presence of enough knock or rose, can blossom and fissure into more potent versions of themselves. So that's a... Happy to work with the pattern, although I remember that was starting to get a bit full on the shelves. I remember incorrectly. And A Journey to the Grove. Black Ellie, who much later became Damascene matriarch of the Sisterhood of the Knot, recounts her journey to the Grove of Green Immortals. In the Grove, Ellie meets with an entity identified as Three Faces, Nine Colors, who may have become her lover. Three Faces is the name of the Applebright, a nowhere hour of youth, healing, and mutation. It offers Ellie a form of eternal youth to take back west with her, which she rejects for certain reasons. She does promise, however, to renew their acquaintance in the season when the Applebright is the witch, not from sentiment, but rather grandly to ensure the continuity of the histories. So I have a feeling that Berry Book is Satisfaction. And there's Orchids and Narcotics. Okay, so first of all, is this the... No, that's the Impulses shelf. This is Foresight. That's clearly not Revelations. Patterns, Regrets, Revelations, Storms, Hindsight, Fears, Contradictions, Salt, Solace, Gossip. Do you mean to tell me... Oh, wow, that is such a small satisfaction section. Okay, so here's going to be my answer to that. Actually, I don't need to get too clever about this yet. And then Berry Book. Oops. I guess I technically read that one first. But yeah, so the idea is if we get any more satisfaction, eventually we'll move it onto this shelf, but I'm also hoping that will free up some shelf space before too long. All right, so I know a lot of this has been building up to this work here. Now, I guess I did commit to using the storm for something else. So I guess the question is, given that I've got a gossip, an intuition, satisfaction, and a pattern, which of these can I make the most of? So I only need 2 for Tridesma Hyra. Leaves and thorns. That will take Grail. Interesting. Okay. But I guess I can only make use of 2 in that case. Preliminal meter, I think, has the highest requirement, but it needs knock. So I can use the intuition and the pattern. And then Orchids and Narcotics is in the exact same boat as Leaves and Thorns. So all of that said, looks like Tridesma Hyra is still the winner here. Which works for me. I mean, again, we're going to want to level all of these up anyway. So let's figure out a game plan in terms of sort of best moves forward. It would make sense for me to alternate between something like Leaves and Thorns and Preliminal Meter and so on, but the catch is that there's just not that much wriggle room, to be honest. Leaves and Thorns, I'm going to need 4 and... actually, Leaves and Thorns and Orchids and Narcotics are basically the same effort. They're alternated in terms of whether Grail or Nectar is the more important of the two, but they're going to be using the exact same memories. And in fact, that's going to be a little bit of a challenge too, because I don't have that much Nectar, but I think we can still get through this. So I'm going to do a slightly counterintuitive approach to this. I'm going to focus on Preliminal Meter first. So for that, definitely the Secret Threshold. So that's 2 of 6. It's Rose and Knock that I need. Okay, 3 of 6. Four of 6. Five of 6. And then the intuition gives me the final 6 of 6. Or I could do deaths and their evasions, but... Alright. Now, Leaves and Thorns is considerably easier. But not for reasons that spark joy. So Impulse first. I don't even remember where we are in the overall. I'll start with Locksmith Stream Trespasses. So I think that's my only Nectar to work with right now. And then from that, I think we start going for whatever Grail we can find. Now, a Gossip is going to be one of those, but Gossip's already spoken for. So it's the Beguiling Melody, and I think that's it. We're going to have to rely on the senses and a couple of other tricks for the relevant memories. But that's fine. We'll make do. I definitely have my work cut out for it. I maybe should have thought of that a little bit more before I went ahead, but I also know that's a next week me problem. So I'll just have to work that out. All right, down to the Grussians. So I think at this point, let's just open up the Incandescent Hollow. Sullen heat still roils below. Its originator must be long gone, but it must be quelled before I can descend safely. And then for Denzel, I'm going to talk to him about core, which again potentially is at odds with leveling up Leaves and Thorns and Orchids and Narcotics, but we'll worry about that later. Everything goes easier with a song. I'll maybe take this opportunity to get the nectar from the plant while I can. The skill is now level 3. Its power aspects have also increased. So I'll use Shaft for that. Investigate the object. Also take a minute here to readjust the lineup. My assistant and I are both a little merrier. Talk about the weather, more useful than one might expect, especially in Britain. So with that, we'll be up to 6. I feel like I'm missing an important detail here. I think we can still do it, but I do think I made a mistake with this. All right, on the matters and deeds of serpents. This was probably the prophecies of the Naga rendered into English and illustrated by William Midnight in Paris in the 1880s, but it shows a number of divergences from that text. It's certainly quite recent by the standards of VAC texts. The serpent folk, called the Great Hooded Princes, came to know the order called the House of Leith and warred across the miles with them. They made an alliance with the mother of ants whose children they had been. The text describes how the Great Hooded Princes escaped, or will escape, from the Fifth History where they had died, or were doomed to die. They engaged in a secret conquest of the land of the Great River, called India in some histories, and have ensured that all other conquests of that land are false conquests. Alright, so that's for preliminary meter. Letters from a fugitive. Lars Westergren, explorer and murderer, spent 7 years escaping justice through his knowledge of byways and shortcuts in the bounds. Throughout that time, he wrote regularly to his daughter, possibly in part to taunt his pursuers. A year with the Legion de Sul, patrolling the bounds until he deserts. A month in the Priory of Captains in Morbahan. 7 days, or so he claims, and ye's behind the wave. Cornered at last by his pursuers, Westergren writes that he will attempt the paths of the sun. He doesn't seem sanguine about his chances, and indeed this is his last letter. An editor's note adds that Westergren's whereabouts or end remain unknown, although he was supposedly sighted at the Christmas market in Vienna, the negotiations between invisible underworld figures that happen each year there in 1929. Three flowers hath the tree. Ernestine Peterhans records her observations of the grows of trees and flowers around the isle, and the omens and portents she attempts to draw from them, particularly the yew tree in Earl Bryan's meadow, whose flowerings are sometimes eccentric. Ernestine observes that in years when the tree flowers black, troubling secrets arise. When it flowers red, war and fires follow, and that no de Wolf heir has ever been born in a year when it flowers white. Ernestine attempts to use the tree's growths to advantage in her business affairs, but it fails. She is evidently very concerned when Hendrik de Wolf's grandson Giles runs off with a pale trollop Hafren in a year when the tree flowers white. She begins to fear she has entirely misinterpreted all the relevant omens. She is deeply concerned for the continuation of the de Wolf line and prays for Giles' return. Against the Sisterhood of the Knot and the foulness of their depraved customs. Hieronymus Pseudo-Hypnotomachus wrote this furious screed about the sinister influence of the Sisterhood of the Knot on his own Church of the Unconquered Sun. Hieronymus claims that the powers served by the Sisterhood of the Knot made an arrangement. The Thunderskin loved the yew, and the Grail destroyed him, as restitution for the destruction of the Axe's loved ones. Hieronymus's writing becomes incoherent with rage at this point. Hieronymus recovers his composure, eventually, to describe how the Thunderskin entered the Mansus through the Peacock Door. This, Hieronymus insists, is abomination upon abomination, but then the most abominable of doors has always been an abomination. The Deaths of the Moon, a historical tract on various forms of survival after death. When the heart no longer beats, the Grail may keep the spirit in the body, and an appetite is indicated to sustain. Alukites are the best known, but not the only of this nature. This is the waning moon mode. The full moon mode is the intensification of one element of the soul to the point where ordinary sustention is unstable. Our protector, the generous of hosts, began of this nature, and its generosity remains ungentle. It is possible for the body's health or the heart's core to outpace the other elements, so that a static mode becomes impossible and growth proceeds in dramatic stages until balance remanifests. The Locksmith's Dream, Trespasses, the third volume of Teresa Galmier's examination of parallels in the mystic dreams of artisans. In this volume, notoriously, Galmier's prose begins to disintegrate, and it is not clear which dreams are in fact her own. The woman in the sand-colored robe has told me, the stairways of the mantis go ever up, death is down. The mother of ants guards both directions with each of her heads, and so the passage must always be through a wound. I think the white door might be a wound. That's one reason the dead sometimes pass it. I think I have the other half of the secret now, and I hope my reader can put both halves together. The Intimations of Skin, fiendishly complex, weirdly distorted illustrations of Congress and anatomy by the haunted visionary painter Niels Fredrik Malsker. Malsker illuminates the evolutions of the names of the Grail with unfortunate clarity. It seems that a lovely who consumes an ivory becomes an ivory, a lovely who consumes a thirstly becomes a thirstly, a lovely who consumes a name of another hour might take its place. In the penultimate illustration, a lovely grapples with a fungoid knot that can only be a name to the crown growth. The lovely's mouth and other portals gape wide, and the growth name is already partially engulfed, but it seems that Malsker couldn't bring himself to illustrate the result, and the final illustration is only a scrawled, bloated obscurity. Alright, so I'm actually feeling a little more optimistic about some of the jobs I'm going to need to do here, but... Watchful potted plant, not everything needs eyes. The sense of awareness persists, but the plant remains immobile, unsettling but harmless. Doesn't even have thorns. So, this is all that I need for Leaves and Thorns, right? And we haven't even used the gossip yet. But priority number one, let's get preliminal meter moved up. I'm also going to take the opportunity to shuffle a few of these down. And I have more Shapt than... Actually, I technically have more Fet now, so... When I thought I'd understood, I'd only begun. So, I'm going to leave a couple of notes for myself here just to clarify a few things. So, on the to-do list, Denzel to 12 heart. So the way I was thinking about this... oh, actually, this isn't that hard, because I haven't given him the Swaddled Thunder yet. Sorry, I'm just writing this stuff out. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to write down the memories that I need. So we've got Satisfaction, Impulse, Beguiling Melody. More importantly, Gossip. So the reason I say more importantly is that all of those are accessible to me through just reading books. So for number 5, which of course would be what I level up Leaves and Thorns with, we could use Scent. But that's going to mean that the consider verb is not available to me. And then I'll also note here Taste. So I could drink some water, for instance. And then for 7, Hive's Lament. And depending on how the day goes, I may want to decide to say, okay, it may not be the most efficient use of elements of the soul, but for any number of reasons, I decide that it is more valuable to me to have these things running in parallel. We are halfway through the day, I'll note. It may be more helpful to have a couple of these things running in parallel, and to turn those into leveled up skills before the end of the day, as opposed to saying I'm only going to work with books, and so delay that into the next day. Overall, though, I think we're in pretty good shape. And of course, that will mean I don't know if I want to try as many books as I did today, but I think definitely The Wonderful Shape is next, because Tridesma Hira is just such a low-level skill right now. Now, a novel method for invocation and contrition, in addition to being quite a difficult text, I actually think I might have been trying to get preliminal meter up to 7, so that might be one I set aside. I'll deal with that. I'll deal with that next stream. The 1,000 thread. Okay, well, more Tridesma Hira. In fact, this is way too far on the. Yeah, let's put you way over here. Lion and the Glass, Glacier and Lightsmithing, probably. Oh, hell yeah. Okay, no, that's definitely one that. So yeah, I think the easy answer on this is to just say if you're in this collection, you're gonna you're gonna get red. So I think once we start getting to the 14s, that's where I'm really gonna be. I'm going to be struggling a little bit to make sure that these get to where they need to be, but I think, you know, up to this point, we should feel pretty secure in being able to level this stuff up. And like I said, with these, once we finish, or at the very least, once we have kind of an idea of, okay, we've dealt with the low-hanging fruit, I'm going to need to work hard for the remaining ones. This might be the point we start looking at a few of these texts and say, you know, we're gonna start moving a few of these level 2s up to 3 or 5 or whatever they need to be. And we've got, just to give you an idea, so it's this shelf, these shelves, and these are the ones that I can draw from in terms of getting the levels. So clearly there's a lot for me to do on that front. But also, you'll notice that I've been a little less tight-fisted in terms of the different rooms. So on Monday, we will see what was waiting in the Incandescent Hollow. And then shortly after that, we will also get a peek at the Gaping Darkness. For those of you who have not seen this game from the start, it actually there's a reference to this inside of it. There's a couple of other references to this individual as well, but I figure that's a fun one. But this is definitely a big reveal here, which I'm looking forward to. And at some point, I'll also open up these packages. Anyways, I think the average length of these videos this week has been 40 minutes, so I'll try and roll it back a little bit. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and we will see you next week. Enjoy your weekend. Take care.